Yo, what's up guys, it's Bluestone, and before I get into today's video, let me just say that literally 100% of y'all who watch my videos are not subscribed. And it would be greatly appreciated if you like and subscribe because it would really help on my channel. Now let's get into the video. So, I really enjoy the Persona games. I refuse to call myself a Persona fan due to how bad the community is, but anyway, I've played most Persona games. I've played Persona 3, Persona 4, Persona 5. I played both versions of Persona 5, but did you know that there's a third version of Persona 5? No, not that one. Say hello to the best Persona spin-off, Persona 5 Strikers. Now, this game is peak. I personally think it's better than both Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. It's still not better than Persona 4 Golden though, but regardless, I think this game is probably the best Persona spin-off. Yes, even better than Persona 4 Arena, because besides the good gameplay in those games, the story modes aren't very good. Now, Persona 5 Strikers is not a fighting game, but instead it's a Musou game. And what is a Musou game, you ask? Well, it's an action game where there's a fudge ton of enemies on screen and you gotta beat all of them up with cool moves or just normal moves. Persona 5 Strikers is the only Musou game I've ever played. I don't know if you can count that one section in Kingdom Hearts 2 as a Musou game though. Persona 5 Strikers was a collaboration between Koei Tecmo and Atlus to make a Musou Persona game. And bro, why do I feel like I'm always talking about Koei Tecmo in my videos? It's either Sega, Capcom, or Koei Tecmo. But this time, it's both Sega and Koei Tecmo. That's awesome, man. Anyway, the game sold really well, actually. It sold over 2 million units, which is very good for a Persona spinoff. And the game also reviewed pretty well with an 83 on Metacritic. And it was also the third best-selling game in the US in 2012. Wait, what? It was also the third best-selling game in the US in 2021, which is crazy. Also, I almost said 2012 again. Why do I keep almost saying 2012? Am I dyslexic or something? I'm actually surprised this game sold that well. Like, it's very surprising, to be honest, especially since it's a Musou game and it's an anime game. Then again, anime stuff has been doing much better lately. Anyway, in today's video, I'll be talking about Persona 5 Strikers, aka the best Persona spinoff. In this video will 100% contain spoilers for this game, and major spoilers too. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then you should probably click off this video. Anyway, let's go! So, Persona 5 Strikers plays similarly to the Dynasty Warrior games. I think. I've never played them. But I really do like the gameplay for this game. It feels kind of like a hack and slash. And just like hack and slash games, you can even do like unique combos and whatnot, which is pretty cool. And they even keep some of the RPG elements from Persona, and they even have baton passing, which is also very cool. But let me get into the bread and butter of the gameplay. So, you have your basic attack, and then you can also use a special attack, which can be used for combos. You can also combo into a Persona as well. Air combos are also a thing. You can jump and use the attack button for air combos. And now this game is surprisingly technical, kind of like Devil May Cry. The game is easy to learn but hard to master. Another thing is that you also, of course, have your Persona, like I mentioned earlier. You can summon a Persona to use one of its skills, and depending on the skill, it will have a larger radius. And multi-hit moves like Meraki, for example, will have a larger radius. And what's really cool is that most skills from the RPG Persona games exist in this game. Even stuff like Concentrate / Mind Charge. Well, they just changed the name from Mind Charge to Concentrate in Persona 5. So, if an enemy is hit with a status ailment, you can get a technical by hitting it with a skill that says, well, technical. For example, a shocked enemy can be hit with a nuclear attack for extra damage, just like how it works in Persona 5. To be honest, I don't remember if Persona 3 and 4 has technicals. It's been a while since I played those games. And just like the RPG counterparts, certain enemies will have weaknesses. So if an enemy is weak to fire or gun attacks, you can hit them with a skill that uses said element and knock them down. And then you can use an all-out attack. And once again, it's just like the RPG counterparts. It's kind of crazy how much they made this Musou game similar to the RPG Persona games. This game also incentivizes you to use the baton pass because each character has these things named Master Arts. And you can unlock them if you play as the character long enough. This game also has 2 level-up systems. There's the character level and the bond level. You can already guess what the character level is. I mean, it's fudging obvious, man. Now, the bond level, that is essentially a skill tree, somewhat. You have all these bond skills, and you can level them up with bond points. The higher the bond level, the more you will gain bond points. Be sure to upgrade these. They can be very useful, especially the ones that increase defense. So there are these objects on the map that you can use a phantom dash on, and they have special actions you can do. Sometimes you can shoot confetti, or ride a skateboard, or even spin around. You can also sneak around and stuff, but who cares? We only care about action around here, not stealth. Killing shadows can also sometimes lead to them dropping a mask, and when you pick them up, you can get a new persona. You can hold up to 12 personas at one time, and you can also discard personas and get persona points. Persona points, or PP, can be used to level up a persona. You can level up personas via the Velvet Room, and you can also store personas in the compendium, so you can come back for them later in case you want them again. You can also craft more personas, and crafting personas is useful, especially if you want more powerful personas, which are very much needed for the end game, especially if you're playing on a higher difficulty. Last but not least, Showtime attacks. Yeah, they're kind of like the Persona 5 Royal Showtime attacks, but sometimes these ones can do a ton of damage, especially one for a certain character you meet later. But yeah, Joker Showtime attack somewhat changes depending on the persona you have, which is pretty cool. And that's pretty much the gameplay for this game, and goodness fudging gracious, this game has so many gameplay elements. Reminds me how in-depth Godhand was. So now that I've gotten the gameplay out of the way, I want to talk about the game itself. But before that, I gotta talk about the elephant in the room, New Game Plus. Unlocking this crud was an annoyingly long process. So unlocking New Game Plus requires fighting every boss in the game, but harder. Yes, including the final boss. Then you have to find some desires and fight some hard bosses. And then you have to fight the Reaper, who is a super boss. And then you go to the Velvet Room and talk to Lavenza, and now your save file will say mastered. And now, if you load it, you can do New Game Plus. And man, I hate unlocking New Game Plus in this game. Like I mentioned before, Persona 5 Strikers is a direct sequel to Persona 5/Persona 5 Royal. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, though. So Joker returns to the city since it's summer vacation. And yeah, this guy lived in the boonies, by the way. So he meets up with some old-ish friends. It wasn't that long ago, though, because he left in March and then returned in August. So yeah, anyway. These guys used to be the Phantom Thieves, but after the events of the first game and the remaster thing, they are done. So there is a new AI assistant named Emma. And yes, she is voiced by the lady who did the voice for Siri, which is pretty funny. And if you can tell already, AI is the main threat of this game. But with Shin Megami Tensei / Persona shenanigans, but I'll get to that bridge when I cross it. So you can name yourself in this game, and I named myself Owen Wilson. Yes, I named myself after celebrities when I play these games. I even did it in Metaphor ReFantasio. So now the Phantom Thieves want to do something cool for their summer vacation, but this all gets ruined when they meet this gal named Alice, and she gives Joker something that has her Emma friend code on there. And when Joker adds her on Emma, he hears something familiar.
Keyword successfully entered. Beginning navigation.
Uh-oh.
Yep, it's back to the metaverse for these guys, and this is where you truly learn how to play the game. But yeah, Alice has been stealing desires using shadows, aka these guys, and Joker and Ryuji and Morgana get captured and meet with her. And wow, yeah, she is definitely a dominatrix. And then the gang gets sent down into the sewers and meets Sophia, who's an AI, but she's special because she can use a persona or something like that, and she joins the Phantom Thieves as her AI assistant. At first, when I first seen this game, I thought she was going to be another robot character like Aegis, but no, she's an AI this time. Oh, and by the way, she lives in Joker's phone. So basically, these new palaces aren't, well, palaces, they're called jails, and they have monarchs instead of palace rulers. And also, jails are larger than palaces, at least that's what they say in-game, but to be honest, they feel much shorter than dungeons in Persona 5. So monarchs basically brainwash people when they get someone to use their Emma friend code, and this is because they steal the individual's desire so then they can control them however they want. So Alice just basically makes people buy a bunch of her garbage, which is not surprising, because if I had merch and the ability to brainwash people, I would probably do the same. So now with the discovery of jails and Sophia the Phantom Thieves investigate Alice, and this game has investigations kind of like Persona 4, where you have to talk to people to gather more info on a person, but unlike Persona 4, you can see how much you progress through the investigation. And the gang learned that she is a terrible person, not as bad as Kamoshida, but she is certainly a pretty bad person. She also bullies her manager and steps on him. I wish that were me. Anyway, okay, so now I want to talk about the first dungeon in the game, the Shibuya Jail. And the Shibuya Jail is actually pretty good in my personal opinion. I don't think it's the best dungeon in the game, however. And it has this circus aesthetic going on, but I guess it's also supposed to give off some Alice in Wonderland vibes, but it really doesn't. It just kind of feels like a circus that is for some reason the same size as a goddamn city. And there's also a surprising amount of platforming as well, and 2D platforming sections as well, like the fudge, man. But yeah, this dungeon basically introduces you to everything a jail will have. Ambushes, 2D platforming sections for some reason, and prison keeps. So a prison keep are these huge buildings here, and they have a cage on top. Inside that cage is a core which controls some aspects of the jail, such as searchlights or something else entirely. When you go into these prison keeps, you usually get ambushed, but there are rare times where you don't get ambushed. Also, these battles in prison keeps play an absolute banger remix of Last Surprise.
Yo, yo, yo!
Another thing I forgot to mention are these sections where Futaba needs to hack these doors. And while she hacks these doors, you need to protect her. And there are quite a few of these sections, but there are a lot of them nearing the end of the game. They also improve a lot by the end of the game, especially when there's a ton of enemies on the map. It just makes it a lot more fun, to be honest. So when you get all the cores, you have to leave the dungeon, unfortunately. And usually they find some stupid way to force you out of the dungeon, which is kind of annoying, I reckon. But when you get forced out of the dungeon, you meet Zenkichi for the first time. And this guy is my favorite character in the game. And he also kind of looks like Vine Sauce Joel to me, and I don't know why. He wants to make a deal with the Phantom Thieves, and the deal involves preventing them from getting arrested, and they also have to help Zenkichi investigate the change of heart incidents around the country. So now it's time to return to the jail, and this is where you get to raid the castle, and I'm going to be honest, the castles are pretty disappointing. They're pretty short, and the level design in them aren't very good. I really wish the castle segments were more like palaces from Persona 5. I think that would have been really good. But hey, beggars cannot be choosers. The Shibuya jail also introduces a new mechanic that makes jails different from palaces, and these are bird cages, and these things lock up the desires, and the key to them are the monarch's trauma. To unlock it, you have to go to the source of the trauma, and for Alice, the source of her trauma was Sujin Academy. Yeah, the school that Joker went to in the first game. She graduated from there, and the gang learns this from the GOAT, Zenkichi. And in these trauma cells, as Futaba calls them, you have to see the traumatic event, which is, for example, bullying for her, and fight a warden. I wonder if the name trauma cells references trauma center. But yeah, wardens are pretty easy to fight, and they get more difficult as the game goes on. I played this game on hard mode, and I was still able to insta-kill everything. Then again, I am playing on New Game Plus. After beating the warden, it's time to send Alice a calling card and take back her desires. So yeah, calling cards are a thing in this game, and yeah, they pull a classic, aka hacking the TVs just like the first game. And so, the Shadow Alice boss fight, and yeah, that's an interesting shadow design. It weirdly kind of reminds me of Shadow Risei from Persona 4, except she's not rainbow colored. So now, this boss is not bad. It kind of feels like a platformer boss a little bit. She's weak to wind, and you can use the confetti shooters in the boss room to take advantage of that weakness. But since I am level 99, I destroyed her in literal seconds. So On basically tells Alice to grow and change as a person. And then all of the desires in the jail are now free and go back to their owners. And that's the end of the first jail. But after the first jail is where you get introduced to the road trip aspect of this game. And I gotta say, it's actually implemented pretty well into the story. So Zenkichi tells them that the stunt they pulled with Alice is making the government very suspicious of them. And then he encourages them to make the deal he mentioned before, because he knows that they aren't the ones behind the change of heart incidents around the country. So then Joker agrees to make the deal, and then they show Zenkichi in the metaverse, and he's freaking the fudge out because, well, I'm pretty sure anyone would freak out if they saw a place like this. So then he asks them to go to Sapporo because the person the police has an eye on will come back to Sapporo on August 8th, and so the road trip begins, but they end up going to Sendai first due to there being a jail in Sendai. And yes, Sophia can smell a jail for some reason. So now the second arc is pretty similar to the Madarame stuff from the first game. So basically, this guy named Ongo Natsume is a book writer, and he just steals stuff from other books. Futaba mentions how blatant it is, and yeah, it's plagiarism. Sounds familiar? Yeah, Madarame did the same thing in Persona 5, but with paintings. Actually, Ongo Natsume even mentions Madarame, and I'm glad that they didn't reuse the plotline though. So yeah, Ongo Natsume is stealing desires and make everyone buy his book, which is just like what's her name did, Alice. But during this second story arc, two new important characters are introduced. Tony Stark, I mean Akira Konoe, he is the CEO of Medice, aka the company behind Emma, and Ichinose, he is the creator of the base of Emma. She is pretty important to the plot, but I'll get to that bridge when I cross it. So the gang watches a lecture from the CEO of Medice, and Ichinose is there, and she overhears them saying that they're the Phantom Thieves, so now she knows, and this becomes relevant again later. So back to Natsume, his dungeon is pretty good, and I would say the whole video game kind of aspect reminds me of Persona 4. It's based on Natsume's book, but Ryuichi says it reminds him of a video game, so whatever. So basically, you have to find 3 proofs or cores to get into the Prince of Nightmares castle, and then there are the Fearsome 4 as well, and these guys appear in each prison keep, except for Doma. You have to fight twice, and the first time you beat him, he teleports you somewhere in the dungeon, and the second time is after you find the Rain Orb. And yeah, you have to find like like 5 orbs in this dungeon. 2 of them are the Rain and Sun orb, which you need to access the first prison keep, and the tricolored orbs to access the second keep. And yeah, Ryuji was right. This does seem like a video game, to be honest. And then there's this section in the jail where there are invisible platforms that you have to jump on, and then another 2D platforming section. Why is this game genuinely just a platformer? And the dungeon boss is, of course, Ango Natsume, and for some reason he does a JoJo pose, but it might be a joke to how he plagiarizes a bunch of stuff. Now, this boss is better than Alice, but it was still easy for me considering the fact that I am level 99. This boss has a mechanic where you gotta destroy his armor. It's kind of funny how he's literally just in his underwear underneath his armor. He's weak to ice in Bless, so you can just destroy him pretty easily, especially if you have something like Black Frost or like what I have, Metatron. And another funny thing is that his armor is just a cardboard cutout, and it shows that literally everything about him is fake. And the next story arc doesn't really involve anything important to the main story, but I'll talk a little bit about it. So this lady, Mariko Hyodo, is running for mayor, but obviously she's using Emma to steal people's desires. And apparently Haru grew up with this lady, and she has trauma due to a snow sculpture incident that killed some poor sod, and it was her employee's fault and some other guy who wanted to be mayor. So yeah, that's basically this story arc in a nutshell. Her dungeon is fine, but a little boring compared to the last dungeon. It's pretty lame, and it's just a snowy city, and the way you get to the prison keeps aren't as interesting as the last dungeon. I do like the snowboarding sections though, but my overall experience with this dungeon was just boring, mostly because it just wasn't very interesting, like I mentioned earlier. And once again, the boss is not very interesting either. Also, she kind of looks like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. You can get eaten by her, so that's a thing. And you have to drop a chandelier on her to make her spit the character out, just deal a lot of damage. She's also weak to fire, so you can just spam fire attacks on her. And her boss took a little bit longer than the other ones. It was still easy, but that was probably because I'm level 99. And also, I'm playing on hard mode, so I don't know why it's so easy. Okay, so there is not much of the game left, but after this, the story progresses dramatically. So Zenkichi has a daughter named Akane, and she kind of hates Zenkichi. But the reason why she hates Zenkichi is because Zenkichi was investigating how his wife, aka Akane's mother, died, and she died because of some political guy who hit her with a car because he was drunk driving. And the investigation was basically called off due to the fact that, well, he was threatened by the political dude, so couldn't do any more investigation after that. And so when Zenkichi's driving the gang to Kyoto, Akane calls him, and she overhears the other girls and automatically assumes that he went to go partying or something. And now that is another reason why she kind of hates him. But yeah, this is where you get properly introduced to Akane, who is a Phantom Thief fanatic. But the gang somewhat help her restore her relationship with her dad, only somewhat for now. But because of Ichinose, they get a lead about a Medice lab in Okinawa. So when they go there, you know, things are fine and they have a fun time on the beach until the people start to hunt them down. And this is because they went to the lab and it has this thing called the Sacred Festoon, and they treat the lab like it's some holy land or something. And yeah, this is because they were brainwashed. So the whole rogue AI thing is about to go into full swing here. So Sophia says she can't sense a jail, but she does say that there's a bad feeling about this place. But this gets changed when Zenkichi knocks out a dude and checks his phone and sees a Emma beta test invitation. And there's a keyword. Operation Miraculi. And they enter the keyword and nothing happens. And then Sophia says he can smell a jail now. And this is where they get sent to a spooky jail. And it has no monarch because the monarch is dead. And Emma basically took over this jail. And they don't tell you this directly, but it's heavily implied because of the voice that is calling Sophia. But there are these tapes from this guy who's the monarch, and you learn that him and the Islanders were test subjects for Emma and their cognitive abilities. Surely this won't go wrong later. But yeah, the guy killed himself because he didn't want his desire stolen, which is crazy. And because this jail doesn't have a monarch, they have to fight a warden instead. And yeah, Ryuji says the F word for the first time. And I'm gonna be honest, the Okinawa jail is probably one of my favorite dungeons in this game. And I really like the evil laboratory aesthetic of this dungeon. It's definitely a different vibe compared to the rest of the game. And of course, there's a 2D platformer section. The jail is never complete without one. And there's like only 3 dungeons without them. 2 of them are like endgame dungeons. Also, the music in this dungeon is great. The boss is alright, but it's just a beefed up warden. So now we're about to enter the final arc of the game. So this story arc involves Akane as well, and she is somewhat important here. And this includes the reintroduction to a character from the first game. So Akira Konoe wants the Phantom Thieves gone, so now he's working with the police to get rid of them. But first, after the lab dungeon, Futaba finds a USB drive in the lab and has this text doc with a list of names. And so Zenkichi takes it as evidence so that he can go investigate. And then the gang decides to go to Kyushu. But then Zenkichi calls them when they're at a restaurant. He tells them to come back to Kyoto because he wants to talk to them about the case. And because Makoto can't drive right now, Haru has to drive. And this is probably the funniest segment of the game because what do you mean she has a license and somehow is a horrific driver?
So I've never really told you guys this, but the moment Haru's hands touch the wheel, get ready to shift into overdrive.
Meanwhile,
they're not here yet, huh? Guess I'm a little early. Well, maybe I'll just keep working on the... What the hell?
After nearly crashing the RV, they meet up with Zenkichi and learn that the change of heart incidents are actually being done by a man named Gion Owada, I don't know how to pronounce his name, who is a crony of Shido. Yeah, this guy also ran over Zenkichi's wife, and like I explained earlier, he was driving while under the influence. Drunk driving, everyone. Also, what is up with this franchise having mothers getting hit by cars? Is there some kind of god of car crashes in Persona or something? Anyways, Zenkichi gives the gang a place to stay. Bro, I really hate this trope that the Persona franchise keeps using. Like, I hate the whole hot spring thing where the women come in while the men are in there and they just get beat up. It's not funny. Stop putting it in every fudging game. I'm glad that in Persona 3 Reload you can avoid getting beat up, but still, at least you just stop putting it in every fudging game already. It's just so overused and unfunny. Anyway, the Phantom Thieves get nearly arrested, but thanks to the GOAT Zenkichi, they escape.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
But unfortunately, he gets arrested, but Makoto calls up her sister to help Zenkichi out. But during this, the Phantom Thieves get into another trap thanks to Akira Konoe, who turns Akane into a monarch because the police failed him. And man, this guy is starting to remind me of Superior man. So Futaba didn't get caught, so she's good. But then Zenkichi gets out of jail thanks to Sae and meets up with Futaba. And now it's time for another dungeon, the Kyoto jail. But you have to play Metal Gear Zenkichi in the stealth segment where you have to avoid shadows. And this is because he doesn't have a persona. So in this part, Zenkichi awakens to a persona to no one's surprise. And he's also one of the most busted persona users in this game because his persona can learn a Megadolion, which is absurd. Also, his persona just looks awesome in general. Valjean is probably one of the best looking personas ever, besides, well, Thanatos. So yeah, the Kyoto dungeon is definitely one of my favorites. It's pretty short though, unfortunately, but still pretty cool. I really like the aesthetic and the music here. It's very good. I also like how you can't do this dungeon in a normal manner because of the portals. And the puzzle in this dungeon is pretty good too. The whole fox father and mother thing is pretty neat. This dungeon also shows how she's obsessed with Phantom Thieves. And while looking at the soundtrack for this game, I learned that the music that plays in this jail is named Counterfeit Phantom, which makes a lot of sense, especially considering the fact that you fight big Phantom Thieves at the end of this dungeon. Like, for example, Shadow Joker. I also like how they use the black and red color scheme for the metaverse. Very neat. But yeah, this boss is pretty cool. It's mostly just hype moments and aura. The boss is just like fighting yourself, aka a thing that old video games used to do all the time. But yeah, after changing Akane's heart, it's time for the end of the game. So Akira Konoe has a jail, and it's in Osaka. And man, seeing Dotonbori reminds me of Yakuza Kiwami 2. I actually don't like this game very much. But that's a topic for another time. But yeah, the gang needs a keyword to get into the dungeon, so they ask Ichinose for some help. And she gives them a keyword to his jail, and the keyword is Zephyrman, who is a Neo Featherman-like character, except he's older, I guess. But yeah, Akira Konoe's jail is just the best jail in the game. It's got this futuristic dystopian vibe to it. The music's great, and the dungeon is overall a very fun experience. And it's also the largest jail in the game. It can take you a while just to get to the first prison keep. This dungeon overall can take at least 2 hours to complete, which is crazy because the other dungeons were much shorter. Now, the way you get to the prison keeps in this one is much more complex than the first dungeon. Like, you actually have to do stuff to get to them this time around, which is very nice. And in the last segment of the dungeon, prison keep is actually just an air control tower, which is neat. And the way to get into there reminds me of Okuma's palace from the first game, especially with the key cards and whatnot. And also, yes, this dungeon does have a 2D platforming section. Like I mentioned, jail is never complete without him. So just like the others, Konoe has a bird cage, and so that means he has trauma. But this time, it's childhood trauma. His dad beat on him when he was a kid, and his dad also killed his mom because he is fudging insane, I guess. So Konoe wanted to be like his childhood hero, Zephyrman, and decided to kill his dad, like father, like son, I guess. So Konoe's boss is probably one of the best bosses in the game, and he's dressed like Zephyrman, and he has a mech. Wow, he really is like Iron Man. Like, his mech kind of looks like the Hulkbuster armor. Actually, no, it doesn't actually. It's nothing like it. So, of course, his mech can shoot lasers, but it can also spam rockets too. There's also a railgun that you can use when his mech starts shooting lasers, or use this attack called Supernova. This guy's also weak to electricity, so I just spammed Maziodyne with my Thor persona. And he has a second phase, and this time he is outside of his mech. And once again, I gotta say, the soundtrack of this game is just so good, bro. Because the Rivers in the Desert remix and the new song named Counter-Strike that played during this fight are peak. But yeah, his second phase is radical. It's too bad the fight is easy, but there's a harder version of this fight, which is nice, I guess. Also, he can use Megadolion, but his version is like a black hole. How come I don't have that, man? But yeah, this boss is honestly just top tier, bro. He's got really fast sword attacks. There's also like these objects that you can shoot to explode with like electricity, or you can just spam a Zeodyne. You can also use some phantom dashes to kill him quicker. I mostly just spammed Debilitate and Maziodyne. Well, first I used Concentrate, then Maziodyne, and yeah, I beat him really easily. And so, after Konoe's heart is changed, Phantom Thieves can now end their journey. Konoe can now shut down Emma for good. Zenkichi says how he's gonna get Owada arrested. Now the Phantom Thieves go back home. But before that, they go to a firework festival, and all is good.
It's within the city limits, so maybe we're fine here.
No, look, I know I deleted the app, but here, it's back on my home screen.
What? No way.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Here we go again.
So, Sophia smells a jail again and tells them that it's fudging growing. And then Zenkichi calls them and tells them to check the news. And the news is that Emma won't shut down. Oh, that can't be good. And so they hurry to the Tokyo radio tower where Emma's servers are located. And yeah, everyone is mind controlled. And then Emma tells them, welcome to the promised land. And then she sends them there. And now it's time for another jail. And this one looks similar to the final dungeon from Persona 5. And yeah, that was intentional. But this dungeon is pretty boring, to be honest. Level design isn't very good. Enemies don't die too easily here, which is pretty nice, I guess. There's no 2D platforming section, which sucks. But anyway, when you get to the end of the first part of this dungeon, you see that Emma has become the Ark of the Covenant and plans to grant mankind's ultimate desire. So here comes a M. Night Shyamalan favorite, a plot twist. So Ichinose is kind of evil, and she created Sophia as if it wasn't obvious already. And she makes Sophia go against the gang because that's what Emma wanted. But then she refuses to fight and falls down. And then Ichinose blasts the gang out of the area. And this is where part 2 of the dungeon takes place, and the same issues still apply, which still sucks. So skipping on ahead, they make a plan to stop Ichinose's laser, and to do that, Futaba needs to hack the laser, so the gang have to distract Ichinose. So here's a segment where you have to fight a bunch of enemies in a classic Musho style, bro. And I almost died multiple times because of this coffin kept spamming, and it nearly killed me each time it used an attack. And I'm level 99, by the way. So Joker's about to die from the laser, but then Sophia comes back to defend him and has a heart-to-heart with her creator. And then we learn Ichinose's backstory about her parents fudging died, and she got kind of bullied when she was younger. Everyone called her a heartless doll. She created Sophia to learn about the human heart, but Sophia asked her about her heart, and then she got offended because she so-called doesn't have one, shut her down. And yeah, that's how the gang found her, Shibuya Jail, I guess. And then Sophia awakens to a persona because she somehow became more like a human. This is the 3rd time this has happened in this fudging franchise. Why does it keep happening? Anyway, you get to play around with her persona a bit in this segment, and Pandora's an interesting persona, but Valjean mods are in every way. So after fighting even more shadows, Sophia convinces Ichinose to grow and change as a person. And now the gang return to the real world, and things get fake instead of real. So Emma merges the real world with the metaverse, and now we get to go into the Tokyo radio tower that has now transformed into the Tree of Knowledge. This game is fudging insane, man. So this is not the first time something like this has happened in the Persona franchise. It nearly happened in Persona 4. It actually happened in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, and it happened at the end of Persona 5. It almost happened again at Royal. It never ends, does it? So I like this dungeon. I like the aesthetic here. The music is also just top tier as well. Probably the best dungeon music in the game. But it's too bad that it's extremely short. Like, I wish it was as long as some other dungeons in the game because you can literally beat it in like 10 minutes or less. Really wish that this dungeon was as long as Palace from Persona 5, especially because this dungeon has some of the best music in the game. You can only hear for like 2 minutes or even 10 seconds because there's like 80 enemy encounters. You also get to fight Metatron at the top of the tree. The mini boss is pretty cool, but I insta-killed him with Alice because Die For Me is so fudging overpowered. So when you get into the elevator, you get to meet the Ark of the Covenant again, and then it sends you into this foggy room. And once again, this reminds me of Persona 4. So to get out of this room, you actually have to disobey Emma and go off the path. And the entire fog room is just one huge desire. And so to make the desire solid, you have to send a calling card to the masses, which is pretty unique. I like this aspect of the game. And to send a calling card, they have to hack Emma, and this is another Protect Futaba section, and there are so many of these in the game, goodness gracious. So after sending a calling card to the masses, it's time for the final boss, and I'm gonna be honest, I hate this boss. The Demiurge has so much fudging health, and it takes so long. Remember my complaint about bosses with bloated health bars in my Kazan video? Yeah, this boss has that issue, both phases in fact. So the first phase is pretty basic and forgettable. She's weak to Bless and Curse. I tried using Die For Me on her, but unfortunately it does not work on bosses, which kind of sucks. And she shoots a bunch of laser beams that actually do a lot of damage, at least on hard mode. Now the second phase is even worse. So in the beginning of this phase, she will restore her health bar every now and then you have to split your team in 3 or 2 or something so you can beat up the spears that heal her. I don't know if you're supposed to do this, but I had Joker by himself, and then I had the teams actually have a full roster. So beating up the spears are pretty easy. Just target their weaknesses or beat them to death. Same goes for the other team as well. Now going on to the actual battle with the Demiurge, this boss is long, boring. I just kept dodging and kept spamming Makuga on Persona combo. You guys know I would use Debilitate on her to lower her stats, then use Concentrate, and then use Makuga on with a Showtime attack. This actually did help make the fight go much faster. Also, she has this really annoying attack where she just shoot a laser on all of the platforms. But yeah, when you beat her, you can use an ultimate all-out attack on her and get this cool cutscene. But yeah, that's about it for this game. Desires return to the people. Zenkichi gets Owada arrested, and Ichinose goes on the journey to find herself again, I guess. And Sophia joins her, and then Joker returns home. In all honesty, I really like this ending. Definitely one of the better endings for a Persona game, despite it being a spin-off. I've got kind of a hot take. I think this game's actually better than Persona 5 Royal. I mean, I mentioned that earlier in the video. It's almost as good as Persona 4 Golden as well. Persona 5 Strikers may have its issues specifically with the level design, but despite that, it has a lot going for it. Like, this is genuinely a great sequel to Persona 5. Like, I think in terms of being a sequel, I think it definitely does a better job than Persona 4 Arena games. Despite having great fighting game gameplay, it doesn't really have a great story, to be honest. The characters act really weird in those games, and they do kind of a poor job at including the Persona 3 characters into the story. Also, it rehashes some story elements from 3 as well, and it really feels like the story mode had less effort put into it than the gameplay overall. But yeah, it just doesn't feel like a good sequel to Persona 4, especially when compared to Strikers. Strikers does a lot more than the Arena games when it comes to characters and the overall story. Like, this game has pretty good gameplay and overall a good story, a pretty good storyline. It does the whole evil AI thing a lot better than some other things in media, even if the ending of the game is a bit wacky. But hey, you can't have a Persona game without having a random deity at the end of the game, am I right? Well, that's about it for me, dog. I'm out of here.